What is up, guys? I'm Andrew, and welcome to Drew Reviews. And today on the channel, we're going to talk about a movie that has one of the worst identity crises I've ever seen in my life, but it's glorious in all the wrong ways. Today is Hands of Steel on Drew Reviews. Guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Andrew, and on this channel we review movies, basically sci-fi, horror, and action. The movie we're going to talk about today has two of those elements for sure. It's 1986's Hands of Steel, written and directed by Sergio Martino, starring Daniel Green, John Saxon, and a cast of other slightly known Italian actors. George Eastman's in this thing. The first time I became aware of this movie was because of this, Sci-Fi Invasion. Set is 50 movies, and they're all winners, let me tell you. There are some good movies on this, like Brother from Another Planet, and this movie here. There's some really bad ones, like The Alien Factor, which, if I get hard up enough for content, I might actually review. But I saw Hands of Steel was on this, and so I went and watched the trailer, and it was basically like a Terminator ripoff. And if you know me and my affinity for Terminator movies, Terminator 1 I gave a 10 out of 10. Terminator 2 I gave a 10 out of 10. They're the only movies I've reviewed, in 50 or so reviews on this channel that have gotten 10s. So I thought, I'm going to have to check this thing out and see if it's everything that I hoped it would be, and boy, is it. This movie is, if you could take Roadhouse, The Terminator, and Over the Top, and put them in a throuple, and they actually conceived, this would be the byproduct of that conception. This movie is the uglier older brother of all those movies, and we're going to get into it right now. So the movie stars Daniel Green, who you might remember from Kingpin and Me, Myself, and Irene, like 15 years later. Well, he looks the same here as he did there, only here he's so jacked up. And he's a cyborg, and his main mission is to infiltrate and kill this environmentalist who's going to give this big speech. And so he bides his time in this hotel, and he finally gets the chance to kill him, and so he punches him right in the chest. He has second thoughts about it as he's doing it, and so he kind of pulls his punch and doesn't kill him. And later on, that's paid off. There's these FBI agents, and they're talking about what the weapon could be, and so it's this is supposed to be a futuristic movie with acid rain and all kinds of environmental issues. So they're typing into the computer what it could be based on the analysis that the old man has given him, and he said, well, it was hard, but it wasn't particularly large, and it's hilarious. Something is missing in translation in these Italian movies. So what comes on screen is this fist, but it's not really a fist, it's more like this, and it's very phallic looking, and it's hilarious. It has to be seen to be believed. So after Paco doesn't kill this environmentalist, he tries to get away. The guy was pretty heavily guarded by security, so the cops go running after him, and he makes this pretty big escape into the desert. Before he gets there, he drives through some acid rain. So it's at this time that the guys who hired him, led by John Saxon, who played Nancy Thompson's dad in Nightmare on Elm Street, they decide they need to cover their tracks just in case this gets led back to them. And so they start killing everybody who had anything to do with Paco Cuerac, which, guys, I can't get over that name. Here's this Italian-American named Paco Cuerac. So they go to the guy that helped create him, and it's in like this futuristic lab, and basically it's just this room where they got dryer vent hoses hanging everywhere to make it look futuristic. And the guy who plays his creator is acting very Broadway. It's like Shakespeare in the Park type acting. Oh no, you've destroyed my life's work! And it's over the top and just ridiculous. So Paco escapes into the desert, and he comes out in what's actually Page, Arizona. There's this place called the Champions Oasis, and so he's looking for a place to lay low, and he walks in, and he meets this woman named Linda there, and he's asking to trade labor for a place to stay, and so she's like, yeah, take that wood over there, and do this for me, and move this beer for me. And of course, they kind of end up falling for each other. This Champions Oasis is not only a bar, but it also hosts arm wrestling tournaments of a nighttime. Uh, so it's hilarious because this movie has this really serious environmental aspect in the very beginning, and then it becomes this arm wrestling competition uh, here in the middle. So of a nighttime, these guys come in, and they're all truckers, and they're led by George Eastman. His character's name's Raul, and they're giving Paco a hard time, trying to get him to arm wrestle him. And this is Daniel Green, and he's jacked up. You know, he's got arms probably 3 times bigger than mine. And you've got these guys as he's getting ready to arm wrestle Raul, putting all their money on Raul. It's just ridiculous to think that George Eastman can beat this guy. So of course they arm wrestle, and he beats him, and they end up getting into this fight. And the fight in this movie is hilarious. This movie is on YouTube, a fairly decent version of it. Go check it out just for this fight. He's taken on like 6 guys, and at one point, he throws this roundhouse kick on this guy and follows up with a back fist and completely misses. And they left it in the movie, and it's so ridiculous. I guess maybe they were running short on time, but it's just like wham, wham, and there's nobody there for him to hit. And then there's another point where these guys tackle him, and he's in like this pose. He kind of looks like Hulk Hogan back here. And he's holding the pose while he's getting tackled. It's just, maybe he was playing the cyborg thing up, but it just looks so stupid and ridiculous. I laughed all the way through that scene. Later on, there's more that goes on at the Champions Oasis. Raul brings in Anatola Blanco, who's like the national arm wrestling champion. His name's Blanco, and of course, he's a white guy too. So I just don't get the casting choices in this. But anyway, they end up arm wrestling over rattlesnakes. Whoever loses, there's a little case with rattlesnakes next to it, and their arm goes down and they get bitten. And of course, Paco beats Anatola, and the rattlesnake comes out, crawls across his hand, and he just chops that son of a gun right in half with his hands of steel. It's ridiculous. I can't help but laugh at it. I'm sorry. I'll try to compose myself. There's a scene in this movie that's ripped straight out of the Terminator, where he's got his arm on this desk, and it's cut open and splayed out, and he's taking the levers in his arms and moving them, and it's just unashamedly straight out of the Terminator. Eventually, the bad guys end up catching up with Paco, and they send in this female cyborg, and of course, he ends up besting her, and she ends up beheaded, but the head is still talking, and the acting in that scene is so bad. I don't know who the actress was, but I felt so sorry for her, and her delivery's terrible. I couldn't stop laughing and cringing at the same time. But the bad guys are going after Paco, and so they have these shotguns, and they're shooting at each other across the desert, and they're like 200 yards away from each other, and they're shooting, and dirt's flying up everywhere. I don't think the creators of this movie understand how shotguns work. So, in a shotgun shell, you've got these little pellets, and they spread out in a pattern when shot. And so they're shooting them like 2 football fields away at each other, and, the dust is just flying, and it's bad. And then they take these little yellow rockets. They look like something you'd buy at a 4th of July stand, and they put them on there, and they're shooting those out of the shotguns at each other, and things are blowing up. It's ridiculous in all the right ways. Eventually, Paco and Linda end up catching up with John Saxon, but not before they have this giant laser cannon battle. It's it's a lot of fun. It looks like it's ripped straight out of the Terminator Future War sequence, and Paco ends up, of course, killing him. And the movie ends just like so abruptly. There's no excuse for the way this movie ends with a little text scrawl at the end. It's kind of dumb. So while I've been making fun of this movie this entire time, I have to admit I really like Hands of Steel. It's got a lot of really big ideas, too big to be a self-contained movie. It wants to be the Terminator, and it kind of wants to be Roadhouse, even though that hadn't been made yet. It kind of wants to be Over the Top, even though that hadn't been made yet. In some ways, it supersedes all those movies because it manages to bring them together, but it also, with that many big ideas, feels pretty disjointed. As far as things I liked about the movie, Daniel Green's performance is really good. He plays a stoic cyborg, much like Arnold in that first movie. Of course, he's a little bit more endearing than Arnold in that first movie, given he was a bad guy. John Saxon's performance is pretty good. The girl that played Linda's pretty good. Raul, George Eastman, is probably the best character in the movie. to me, and all of his little lackeys, his little lap dogs that get beat up by Paco in that stupid looking bar fight. So the cinematography in this was really beautiful. It's filmed outside of Page, Arizona. So when he's walking across the desert and he comes up on the Champions Oasis, you see the rock formations behind there. I believe that gas station is actually still there. I think there might be some scenes there at like Horseshoe Bend. The first part of the movie is okay. The second part of the movie to me is where it really takes off. I really like that arm wrestling part of the movie, and I kind of wish the whole movie was like that. The last act of the movie is okay. It all feels kind of rushed to me. There's a really big explosion on this bridge that's pretty spectacular. As a matter of fact, a crew member on this movie died. I believe it was one of the camera operators hanging out of that helicopter, when they're filming up around that bridge. So this movie has a little bit of a tragic aura about it. Two other things that I really liked about this movie. The score by Claudio Simonetti is a lot of fun. It's a really good score, especially that main score in the beginning. And then when there's a lot of action, the faster stuff, the score is really good there as well. And of course, the bar fight stuff, I love that. Even the miscues, with missing kicks and missing back fists and everything. I love this movie for that. Thank you for leaving that in. Now, as far as the bad, some of the acting's pretty bad. You've got that guy, Paco's creator, in that lab. It's pretty terrible. You've got the Terminator rip-off stuff, and I can't get too mad at it for that because Italian exploitation was bad for taking a really good original idea and just taking it and making it their own and running with it. So I can't get onto it too bad for that. And the other thing is the end of the movie is just too abrupt for me. The part about Paco not existing and everything, and it was too much. So this movie on IMDb is a 5.3. I like a lot of the big ideas in it. I like that they really went for it and that it's so over the top, pun totally intended. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. It's one I go back to fairly often. I watch this about once a year. I can admit this is not the best movie. And I've probably rated some movies on this channel lower than this, and you'd see this and go, what? But this movie is so much fun. You have to see it. Like I said, it's on YouTube. Go check it out. It's like a quick hour and 25 minutes. So do yourself a favor. Check out Hands of Steel. Next time I'll be back. I think I'm going to try to do more horror. I just did My Bloody Valentine last week, and that was the first horror movie I'd done in quite a while. So try not to take so long between horror movies for you guys, because I've been doing a lot of sci-fi and a lot of action. So I'm not sure what I'm doing next, but expect a little bit more horror, maybe some Friday the 13th. So we'll see what's up. Until then, I'm Andrew, and I'll see you down the line.